Hey, good evening.
Hello. How are you?
So well, how are you?
Good.
Just give it one more second. I know Michael is joining us. Well, as we wait for him, let me welcome everyone to the 56th Chicago International Film Festival. My name is Joy Norris. I am the Black Perspectives and After Dark programmer this festival season. And joining me tonight in conversation around the documentary 40 Years a Prisoner is the film's writer, director, editor, producer, Tommy Oliver, and of course the film's subject, Michael Africa Jr. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Of course. And for everyone watching with us live, if you have any questions, please just drop them in the chat. And later on in the conversation, we will get to those questions. So, man, there's a lot to be said about this documentary. Obviously, it's incredibly timely in a wonderful and unfortunate way, considering the state of our country. And I'm very curious, we can, move on to that later, but you have so much access to archival footage from all sorts of media. And it's wild that, considering that it was covered from different perspectives, that the movement is relatively not well known, to a lot of Americans, and unfortunately to a lot of Black Americans. So from that, I'm curious, how did you get so much access to this footage?
A whole lot of work and research, and serious shout out to my EP/archival producer, Keith Janet, and he and we went through so much. There's a lot of stuff at the Temple Urban Archive, and we went through more logs than you could ever imagine. And we had to go through the logs and then have stuff requested and pull stuff, and then a lot of it hadn't been transferred and it was still on film, and so we had to have it transferred and then go through and try to find just one small piece. And sometimes that would be that send back a 40-minute newsreel, and the thing we're looking for was 2 seconds of it. And so we'd have to watch that 40 minutes to find that 2 seconds, and sometimes there would be nothing there. On top of that, we went through literally every single archival source that we could find. And we also got very lucky in a couple of occasions. There was a student at Temple, Karen Palmer, who she was doing a documentary at the time, and she wound up shooting stuff, and the footage that she shot, her tapes she shot 31 tapes on something called a portapack, which were half-inch magnetic tapes, and the tapes were tucked away in a closet for 40 years. Actually 40 years. And so she found them, and it took a bit of conversation, but ultimately she let us take them, and we went through the painstaking process of transferring those. And so they had been, they were in various states of disrepair, and there was mold, and there was all sorts of stuff, but we transferred all of that. And it was just a journey to uncover as much as we could, because for me, I didn't know what happened in '78. Actually, let me take that even beyond that. I didn't know '78 happened at all, like at all. Like most people, if they had an understanding of the movie, it was mostly what happened in '85. But the idea of '78, I had no idea. And so to try to understand what happened on August 8th, it meant to understand the lead up. And so both of those things were really complicated. A lot of stakeholders and a lot of things going on. And so it required a whole lot of data dumping and a whole lot of trying to just understand from archival footage and conversation and piecing together as much as we could from as many places as we could, so we could be as objective as we could.
And so what, coming from, having all this wealth of information, but knowing relatively nothing, before that. How did you come into the story, and then how did you and Mike connect?
Well, that is how I came into the story, really, because
Okay.
I'm a research junkie, and I sort of fell down the rabbit hole of researching move, and I read a book, and then I read another book, and then I read another book, and I went through 7 books, and then I went through all the articles I could find, and I went to the Urban Archive, and I went through a lot of the information, which was they had way more than just the archival logs. There were a ton of news articles and just pieces of all sorts of things. But I realized there was still so much more that I didn't know. And so I had a buddy, Maxwell Brown in Philly, who used to work for the mayor, make an introduction for me to move. And so he made an introduction to Ramona, Africa. And during that time, when I went to meet Ramona, she brought along this guy, Mike Africa. And I was like, who the heck is this guy? He's like, I was there to meet Ramona. And he and I got along very well, very quickly, and I learned a couple of things. One, I had no idea that his family, including his parents, were still in prison for what happened in '78. That they were serving 30 to 100-year sentences. I also had no idea that he was literally born in a jail cell. I also didn't know that he was fighting to get them out, because if I didn't know they were in jail, how could I know that? But the idea that this man had committed his life to getting his parents out, parents that he had never seen outside of prison, and that's all he wanted to do. That's all he was doing. And on top of that, the further understanding that the things they were fighting against at that point when they were in prison, police brutality, wrongful incarceration, systemic racism, abuse of power, are the exact same fucking things we're fighting against right now.
Yeah.
And so that was it was a lot. And then to realize that this person who had never seen his parents outside of prison was somehow a beacon of positivity, who wasn't bitter, who wasn't angry. And it was an atypical situation and an atypical person, and somebody who just wanted his family home, just wanted his parents home. And so that was really my way in.
Truly. Mike, this documentary obviously is very educational in what it, delivers in terms of like exposing us to move and to, all these different facets of the American justice system, right? But it is so much about a son's love for his parents. And I have a plethora of questions for you, but as Tommy was saying, there is this strong, like unbreakable, unwavering positivity and just like peace that you carry with yourself. How were you able to cultivate that throughout your life?
Well, I can't take credit for cultivating that. I think, I was a community kid, right? Being that my parents were in prison, I lived with a lot of different members of the family in the community of Move. It started with my grandmother, and she was just, she had 5 children, and 3 of them at the time, actually 4 of them, were in prison. And you would have never known it by the way she carried herself. And then she just kind of transferred that same like energy over, and she did what had to be done. And she didn't blame anyone for anything. She didn't point fingers. She just did what had to be done. And then so, just carrying that on, and seeing the way other families interacted with each other, and people that were not my parents taking me under their wing to show me what I needed to learn, and teach me the lessons. Specifically, Mo Africa, who has 6 children of his own. He took me into his home, and he took me to work with him for his contracting business, and he taught me to work with my hands, and he taught me how to build and construct. And he never treated me like I wasn't one of his kids. And so just those types of examples just kind of made me feel that I wanted to be that way too. And that was the example that I saw throughout the organization. And it wasn't something that I had to try to do. It wasn't something that I had to like convince myself of. It's just the way that I was raised by Move. So we don't believe in hate. We believe that hate is the root of evil, and evil doesn't give us anything that we want. So we don't. I mean, we get mad about things. Don't get me wrong. I got a temper. You know what I'm saying? Don't step on my foot, right? but but I mean, in terms of like carrying some type of grudge or carrying around a hate for someone because of some wrong that was done, that doesn't really right the wrong, you know. So it's important for us to like try to do what we can to help things, not make things worse by hating them.
Wow. That is ultimate grace. So as you're growing up within the Move organization, what were you learning about the government or the systems that were holding your parents? And what then sparked you to, I mean, this is a lifelong effort, of course, but what then sparked you to want to take under this endeavor?
The system is full of a lot of the hate that we talk about. You know, the police will kill a person just because he's black. They will imprison people and give them unjust jail terms just because they look like they might be guilty. And so, understanding that at a very young age, seeing it for myself, actually being a person that was taken from my caretakers at the age of 3 years old, just because the police wanted to attack, move houses, um, and arrest the people, and they put us in an orphanage, and me and 14 other children. We didn't. What did we do? And then what did we do to deserve the punishment and torture for 11 days? And so no, I learned at a very young age that the system has a lot of bad qualities, and I was determined to not be a part of that. I wanted to be a solution. I wanted to be someone that could help ease the pain from some of the experiences that people were going through. I mean, after being in an orphanage for 11 days and being tortured and being starved and my dreadlocks combed out of my hair, I don't want someone else to have to feel the same pain. So as long as I can, I've been a revolutionary. As long as I can remember the understanding of what the word revolution meant, I've always wanted to make some kind of change to help other people.
That's incredible. And then at what age did you decide to take this on of getting your parents and other Move members?
At the age that I decided that I was going to really get involved in this, I was about 14 years old. Ramona Africa took me with her. I was at the prison to visit my dad, and my dad they were trying to, the Move Now were trying to decide which lawyer they wanted to represent them. And it was the options they had was between Paul Hetznecker and William Kunstler, who was a famous civil rights attorney. And I was there when the decision was being made and why they chose Paul Hetznecker and not this nationally known William Kunstler, who had represented some very famous people. If you look his name up, you'll find that he has a very impressive resume. But so when my father gave the explanation as to why he wanted this lawyer, I was there in the room. And then when we first met the lawyer and the lawyer began to lay down his strategy as to what he felt would be the easiest route to getting the people out, I was there for that. And, at 14 years old, I wasn't very astute. I was like falling asleep in the chair, right? But Ramona would talk to me and explain to me how it would be very valuable if I could find the energy to stay awake and listen to some of this stuff, right? And the lawyer himself, Paul Hetznecker, he was challenging me, talking to me about, kind of giving me a pep talk about how I could be very helpful in this case because two of the people are my parents. And I just, you know, I accepted that. And I had started doing some research and started finding some archives, and I started finding police reports from the incident. I started, you know, just getting deeper into it, into the case. And I, you know, did that until they got home.
That's beautiful. So, as you and Tommy are discussing this film, how did you talk about what was the process of figuring out where you were entering this, you know, this journey, your journey, and how did you decide how much access you actually wanted to give Tommy to your life? Because he had so much, you know.
That's a good question.
That is a really good question.
Uh-huh.
And I'm gonna tell you the answer. Most people I don't give that much access to. When Tommy and I met, we just hit it off. It was just really natural. It was no, you know, I've had a lot of people come to me and say they want to do something. They want to do a movie. They want to whatever. And Tommy and I, we mostly, in the beginning, it wasn't even like we were talking about a project. It was mostly we were talking, it was almost as if we'd known each other for years. And we just really connected. So when he was like, hey, I want to do this. And I was like, okay, come on. It wasn't even planned. It just happened that way. And so, you know, I'd given him access to some of the archives that I had discovered, police reports. I'll tell you, when we were going through some of these files, I think this was before my mom got out, Tommy came to my house. And so I have a filing cabinet. I have many filing cabinets full of information and archives. But this one particular one contains some of the police reports and witness statements from the 78 shootout, but they were in the house that was bombed on May 13th, 1985. And somehow they survived that bombing and that fire. And they're covered, and you can see the edges are burned, and like some of them are just completely black and they're brittle and falling apart. Tommy and I were going through that filing cabinet. Tommy was going through it more than I was. I was just basically watching him go through it mostly. And he got sick. The ashes and the dust and whatever was in there, like we had to go to Home Depot and get respirators so that we could continue to go through the filing cabinet. And like that moment, I don't know, for me, that was like a bonding moment. We're going through these things together, right? You know, like, and that's never happened to anyone before. Like, that was just the kind of thing that happened. And he didn't get discouraged. He was like, all right, well, we just got to figure out another way to go through these files. But we went to Home Depot, we got the files, he got well, and then we kept on going. You know, and that's the way it's been ever since, like the first day we met, you know?
Yeah. You remember we had this refrain back and forth about Alex Haley?
I do. We had so right. So yeah, I trust you.
Go on.
So when Tommy and I first met, Tommy was asking for certain things, and I was like, I don't know about that. Like, that's a little personal. He was like, no, but you know, and I was thinking about it. I was like, I don't know if I can give you that. And it was just certain things that I hadn't shared with anyone. People knew that I had it, certain information, certain writings of John Africa that were very personal to me because John Africa's not here anymore, you know? And so I didn't really want to part with it. And there were certain things that I just was like, so Alex Haley and Malcolm X had this relationship, right? Malcolm X's autobiography was written with Alex Haley. And when Alex Haley and Malcolm X had a conversation, Malcolm X explained to Alex Haley that he trusted him a certain percentage.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, I trust you. Like, he said, I can tell you that I trust you like 50%. And then like, after they had this nice long conversation and got to know each other over lunch, Malcolm X called Alex Haley in the middle of the night and said, I trust you like 80%. And so Tommy and I had a moment that was very similar to that. And we talked about it, and we've been talking about that ever since too.
Is yours still 80% or is it?
No, I trust it. I trust Tommy about 105% right now. Yeah, Tommy's solid. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I trust you too.
Yeah, man.
That's great. I mean, you all have such an incredible relationship, and like you're saying, trust is so essential when you're covering such a personal subject matter and something that is so something that seems so sensitive in terms of even what the response can be from outside sources. I'm curious if you face any pushback or resistance from like Philly PD or any like Pennsylvania authorities or any authorities in the country who.
They haven't seen it yet.
Go ahead.
They haven't seen it yet. So.
Oh, okay.
No, and I'll respond by saying I think that anybody that watches this film that has a problem with this probably doesn't have a heart. I mean, like,
wow.
I mean, I'm just a guy who's trying to get his family out of prison. Yeah. I don't have anything to do with what happened to the murdered officer. I don't know who did it. I don't have anything to do with that. What I know is that that officer was killed, and that was horrible. And that shouldn't have happened. Yeah. I know that those same officers came to my house and dropped a bomb on our family and killed 11 of our family members, and that shouldn't have happened either. And to try to like hold a grudge and act like, you know, you're going to hate these people forever just because of this incident or something like that. Those people are just people that want to hate because they believe in hate. And that has nothing to do with what this film is about. This film is about, you know, people that had this experience, and we're trying to finally put an end to a tragedy that, you know, was long overdue.
So very true. And to add to that, I tried very hard to be as objective as I knew how to be. And so it was interviewing both sides. It was looking at as best we could via all the research that we did from everything that we were able to pull from. We digitized 10,000 plus pages of court transcripts. We went through every single page. Every single page. We went through every single piece of evidence that we could find. And so it wasn't about, hey, here's this completely biased story. No, not what it is at all. And truthfully, my whole thing was, look, I'm going to give you the warts and all story. You can think the move was dirty. You can think they were nasty. You can think they were uncouth. End of the day, though, you have to be heartless to think that what happened to them was deserved, no matter how much you dislike them. And so it wouldn't serve the story to be soft on them. It wouldn't serve the story to do anything but tell the truth.
Right. I'm curious because you do get access to these, like you're saying, you're interviewing both sides. You're interviewing police officers who are there. You're interviewing reporters and things like that. What was your pitch to get them on board? Were they very open to reliving this, or, you know, what was it?
It was honestly a lot of that, where I was very clear that my intention was not to look at things from a biased lens, and to look at things completely and honestly, and to consider all perspectives and make sure that we had a very strong understanding and the ability to corroborate things that we said. There were plenty of things on either side that either side said that weren't included because we couldn't substantiate it. Yeah. So it was just, I'm going to look at this thing objectively. And I think for a lot of people, they appreciated that on both sides, where MOVE had so oftentimes been misrepresented. And on the other side, I think they responded to that. Why? I don't know. But I think in some cases with the police, they were just telling their stories. In some cases, it was just the story they had told for 40 years. And so they felt as though they had nothing to hide. But again, I wasn't trying to catch anybody, anything. I wasn't trying to manipulate anybody or anything. And there aren't Frankenbites in this film where there are that are forced together to make a point. There's none of that. And so it's people saying what they say. and just an honest exploration of that. And I saw a question pop up. Would I screen it for law enforcement? I don't know where those questions are, but yeah, I'd happily do so because again, it was just meant to be an honest exploration. And if anything, I'd love to have a conversation with them and to figure out how we can move past these things. But when we sweep things under the rug, when we forget things, then we are unfortunately in many cases doomed to repeat those sorts of things.
And I'd like to add too, like, screening this for law enforcement. We've met with the chief law enforcer of the city of Philadelphia, and that being not only the former mayor Wilson Good, but also the former mayor and governor Ed Rendell.
Yep, and DA,
and the district attorney, and and we've reached out to meet with Larry Krasner, who is the current district attorney, Governor Wolf, who is the current governor. So there's no hiding or trying to get beyond or past certain entities here. This is a very clear, open opportunity for anyone who wants to have a conversation about this so that we can make progress.
Right. In these conversations, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, the more questions, the better. Happy to answer anything, as in here.
Oh, okay. I'm sure they'll start popping up as people start, logging in or just thinking of things. As you're interviewing these people who have been telling these stories for decades, did you find that there were some, and I know you were being as objective as possible, but was anyone's mind changed, or did they ever consider a different perspective, or was there any shift?
Yeah. And I think the two people who I think shifted from where they were publicly before were probably the two mayors. So Mayor Good and Mayor Rendell. And I think that Rendell, I don't know how much of it was just politics versus him really changing, or maybe there was just nuance to it because it's not plain and simple. Because there were things where he was still very anti-move, but he still said that he thought they were very likely candidates for parole or to be pardoned. And so I don't know. But Wilson Good, he was pretty anti-move for quite a while. He was the mayor when the city dropped the bomb in '85, and he did a pretty significant turn from where he was previously, and he also went as far as advocating to the prison board that they were released.
Wow, that's truly incredible. It inspires hope, but also looking at the state of things nationally. To frame it in a question. Oh, go for it.
But I'll say this. Sorry to cut you off, but I think that comes from the individual, and if Mike had been a bitter person or an angry person, that wouldn't have happened. And so it was the fact that Mike was open to the idea of a conversation with this person that was significantly responsible for 11 MOVE members dying. And so the ability to look, I can't even say look past it or look beyond it. It was just to find love in that situation, to have a conversation.
Mike, man, let me ask. Do you know? I'm sure you've talked to your parents, abundantly about MOVE and their relationship to it. Do you know what sparked their interest in it, or what brought them to their possible shift in consciousness? What were their lives like before MOVE?
Well, John Africa, the founder of the MOVE organization, is our uncle. That's my mother's uncle. That's my grandmother's brother. So he was always in their lives. And so when he started the organization, it was just it just kind of fit right in with what they kind of believed about him anyway. He was different than other people. The way he lived, the way he thought, the way he behaved was just different. He carried himself a different way. So, when he started the organization, they just meshed right into it with him. And then when I was born in 78, I was born into the organization. So it was natural. It was just is our way of life. So and they talk about how they like the specific incidents that like kind of opened their eyes to John Africa's teaching and what made them want to get involved. With my mom, it was just um, she was she was very interested in his love for people and love for children, especially, and how he behaved and how children were around him, and how animals and like he was like, people talk about Jesus, how like people are drawn to him, they're just attracted to him all the time, and like that's kind of like how she described the way people and animals and even people that didn't like move, John Africa didn't have any personal enemies. He loved everybody and everybody loved him, kind of like type of thing. So and my dad my dad wasn't interested in move, but he was interested in my mom. And since she, and since she was at Move headquarters, that's where he was. But he really didn't want anything to do with Move. Not that he hated Move people, but he was in the military. He wasn't trying to be a Move member. But my mom was there. He loved my mom, and the rest is history.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah.
Tommy, I'm curious, going through, well, and Mike, of course, going through all of the archives, all of this information, how has it maybe influenced how you see the system now? I mean, I'm sure you already had some, concept of like how the American system operates, our judicial system operates, and its lack of fairness, of course. But were there anything that, or any bits of data that you came across that was particularly like surprising to you both?
You say lack of fairness, but in many ways the system operates exactly and precisely as it has been designed to.
Yeah.
The system, there are two things that we can look at in this film alone. There was overwhelming evidence for what happened to Delbert Africa. It's clear as day, both photographs, firsthand testimony, and video. Due process did not pan out. The judge decided to unilaterally decide on a case that was a jury case. And so, what are we to take away from that? Secondly, a system where it is legal and allowable for 9 people to be convicted and sentenced for 30 to 100 years for the murder of one officer. 1 bullet, 9 people. And so, taking away the question of whether or not any of them did it, 9 people, 30 to 100 years for 1 officer. And so that's our system, again, functioning precisely as it was designed. And the issue is the systemic issue in the laws and the things that people tend to ignore or overlook, where it's all about who I'm going to vote for president, yet they aren't concerned about who the local governors or how the local governance operates. They're not voting on bills. They're not informing themselves. They're not concerned with who the district attorney is. They're not concerned with any of those things. But those things make so much more of a difference. People get excited about protesting, but protesting is not the work. Protesting is the sizzle. And so it's about understanding that until we have systemic change, we won't have any change.
Truly. Mike, any interesting or like surprising data that you came across in this process?
Well, I mean, I've been going through this process for 25 years, so like I've come across a lot of things over the course of that time that I hadn't even understood before, right? I think the most like interesting thing for me is to read about myself in the transcripts
Oh,
and to read about this baby that was born in a jail cell and to read the transcript and to read the judge's words and Janet Africa's words and her insisting that Debbie Africa had a baby in jail, and like for me to be reading it, I can visualize it happening to someone, but it's like kind of crazy that it's actually me. That was kind of crazy because I didn't know that I was born in jail until I was almost a teenager. So to read about it, it was a little strange.
that's a
But
profound scene where you go to the cell. Was there, what mental or energy work did you have to do before that, or?
in that time, excuse me, hold on one second.
Okay.
So we had my phone. Hold on one second. My phone is acting a little funny. I think I have to make sure that it's charging. Hold on.
Gotcha.
So we had. Okay, yeah, because we've done a few of these, so my batteries are running low. So yeah,
No
going
problem.
to the prison, I had heard so much about those prisons that like I was really looking forward to actually seeing one that I've heard so much about. And so when we actually finally actually made that trip, I was really, really excited to see, what that actually looked like and what the cells actually looked like. And they looked exactly how I imagined them. They looked exactly the way the people had described them to me over the years. Um, it was also it was also very daunting too. Like to actually be inside of a prison cell. I've never been inside other than when I was born. I've never been inside of a prison cell before. And then like to hear the council member who took us into the prison explain why they wanted to shut that jail down because of the way it dehumanized people, and you have to like kind of like surrender your own like respect to the officers as you step in and out of the cells. To know that my mom went through that every time she got out of the cell to go take a shower, or every time she went to go eat, or it was one of those moments where I don't know if you've ever experienced this before, but you have a mental um, some type of mental thing happening with you that is so strenuous that it puts you to sleep for a while. After we did that trip to the prison, I slept for about 5 or 6 hours more than I normally sleep in a typical night. So it was a heck of an experience.
Right. Tommy, of course, for the visual and storytelling element of it, what else did you want to get from that scene?
I tend to not go in wanting much at all, and as in general, it's very much about following where things are and not trying to lead or dictate or push, and allow Mike to be Mike wherever he feels like he needs to go, whatever he feels like he needs to say, and it's my job to move and to do what I need to do that. And so like I also shot the film, and so I was shooting it, and so it was me. It wasn't me and a crew or anything. It was me shooting, and so it was easy to sort of move around him and allow him to be however emotional or unemotional or reflective or not. It was all sort of up to him. And so for me, though, it was just, it turned out that, I mean, that section is so emotional. And so, this is so emotional.
Yeah.
And I remember cutting it and feeling the emotion and the flow and the way that we transitioned from his mom before that, who was actually pregnant in that sequence, which you can't really tell because she's barely pregnant.
Mhm.
She's in there, or he's in there, and it was just following the emotion and allowing it to be whatever it needed to be. And so many times I think of my job as figuring out how to get out of the way. And what I mean by that is I think the cinematography or the editing or directing or whatever it is, it's all in service of the emotion. It's all in service of what needs to happen, and it's not about any of those things taking precedent or being front and center. And so it's about how do we connect, and if anything isn't in service of that, then it's got to go. And so in that case, it was exactly that. It was just trying to figure out how to give him the space to be however he's going to be, and for me to figure out how to just support that and share that.
Yes, it definitely served its purpose. So I have one last question, and I will let you go. In this experience and seeing where we are as a country now, have your ideas of revolution or dissent changed? And are you hopeful for some lasting change in this country?
I think that the changes that needed to be made in the 70s when MOVE was really active, I think those changes still need to be made today. And I think the government and its lack of respect for people is going to force a lot more MOVE organizations because they won't stop. You know, you have a man that's got a knee on his neck, and you got bystanders and you got other police supporting this police officer killing this man on camera. And you know, like, this is the type of activity that created the MOVE organization. This injustice is the injustices that created the Black Panthers. These types of injustices are the injustices that are creating Black Lives Matter. So I think that there needs to be as many organizations as it takes that needs to make change. And the hope that I have is, it's not even a thing of hope as much as it is understanding that something has to be done and just going ahead and doing it. You know, hope is needed in some elements of the struggle, but more than hope is action.
What Mike said, what it comes down to. And I appreciate you, Joy, and the Chicago Film Festival, and really I'm honored that you have us and for the conversation.
Thank you to the Chicago International Film Festival.
Of course, Mike beautifully said, and thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time and for sharing this project with us. We're wishing you nothing but success in getting this word out on the film. It's truly a stunning film. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all who have been watching live. Enjoy the rest of your night.
See you on the next go round.
Bye.
Absolutely. Bye.
Peace.